Hey guys, you're back with Game Fisher Productions here with your host Mike L. Today I'm going to talk to you about all the different kinds of fishing lines we now have out on the market between mono, braid, fluorocarbon. There's so many choices to choose, and I'm hoping I can help you out quite a bit today by helping you choose what line is going to work best for what you're fishing for, whether it's panfish, game fish like bass, pike, and muskie, or just rough fish like gar, dogfish, and carp and catfish. So I hope you guys enjoy. Alright, to start out today, we're going to talk about mono copolymer hybrid lines. For example, today we have P-Line Fluoroclear and 10-pound test. Some of the things with this kind of line, they very good price range for it, for $7 to $10 for the 300 yards of it. Very good deal, especially if you're trying not to break the bank and you only fish every once in a while. This line has good knot strength. It's not like fluorocarbon where you have to wet it all the time when you get to tie another knot, unless you're just using swivel hooks, which that's not a big deal. Everyone uses them. They also have stretch. The stretch kind of helps with playing out fish a lot more than with a braid or a fluorocarbon where they don't stretch that much. So if, like, I know people who use it just because it stretches, they don't like the feel of other lines, which is perfectly fine. Everyone has their opinion with this kind of stuff. Another thing, too, is the excellent knot strength. Is you don't have to wet it, and it's pretty good compared to fluorocarbon. So, and the other thing, too, is monofilament, copolymer, all that floats, making it a lot easier to use it for topwater. So this is really the only application I use this for, is topwater, being the reason it floats. Braid floats quite well, but fluorocarbon sinks, that's a little more for bottom fishing and whatnot. But braid does float somewhat until it gets wet, unless you use like newer stuff. Some of the cons of this, though, well, truly there isn't any cons with mono, unless, of course, you have any of your own. Moving on to now, we're going to talk about braid. Sorry, this is a different spool. Now, this stuff is, some of the advantage of this stuff, extremely strong. You can get a 65-pound test, 50-pound test, 40, 30, 30-pound test is equivalent to 8-pound test. 65 is equivalent to like 14 to 17-pound test. It's amazing how this stuff works. It's so strong. Most times this is a tournament kind of fishing stuff where you can throw any kind of lure in the heaviest of slop and you're guaranteed to get it back. Like if you get snagged on a log, most times, like if it's just a log stuck in the mud, most times you're just going to pull the log out with you when you get it. This is some of the nicer things about having braided line, being able to not really lose your lure. I've had a lot of things happen where I snag on a rock and your buddies are like, oh, you're going to lose your lure. No, I won't. You just yank it out, and most times you get it back, sometimes you don't. Sometimes the rock just cuts it. This stuff's so durable, too. This, for example, this is Suffix 832. Some of my newer favorite stuff. I love it. I'm not going to bash anybody else. But some of the cons of this stuff, sure, it's strong, but you sacrifice sometimes for visibility. The braid, unless you get like a spider wire Invisibraid or Fireline crystal, that's about as translucent as you're gonna get. And most times, like this, I usually use the green for hug fishing and whatnot. Unless you're fishing stained water, you're lacking visibility. Other things too with this, it can be very harsh on your gear, especially if you have a cheaper rod or reel. It can cut into your guides. Not going to bash anybody, but sometimes it does, depending on the brand. Next we're going to talk about is fluorocarbon. This stuff has been a revolution now. This first started out in Europe, and the only two people who really make this is Japan and Germany. Now, some of the things about this line is the ability to actually refract light similar to water. It's not exactly like water, making it truly almost invisible and it's just amazing. This has been a revolution for clear water fishermen. Most times it's fished by bass fishermen and pan fishermen. A lot of times for panfish it's crappie. And some of the things that are nice about this is just the ability to be able to fish such clear water. Mono used to be the target for this, but this has taken over. Some of the things about this though is the fact that some of the stuff has a tendency to have a lot of memory compared to mono and braid, so it kind of makes it a little more difficult. It has issues making a lot of wind knots. Other things too are like knot strength. A lot of times this stuff will break a lot more before a mono knot's gonna break, and you also have to wet the knot too. If you don't, when you tighten it, it creates friction, weakening the line, because this line does not like heat that much. So when it happens, your knot becomes really weak, and most times when a fish hits it or you set the hook, it's gonna snap. So the thing is too, if you're gonna be able to if you want to use fluorocarbon, make sure you wet your knot before you tighten it, because that's where a lot of people start straying away, is because, oh, the knots aren't strong. Well, you gotta wet it, and if you did wet it, try wetting it a little more, and most times that'll fix your problem. If not, then try a different brand. I've gone through a couple different brands, and I like to always come back to Seegers. They've always been good, and I love this line. So, other things too is when you're using line, when it comes to replacing your line though, is every 1 or 2 years, depending on what you use, you replace it. Most times people with fluorocarbon and mono, you usually have to replace it within that time. Braid, you can have it as long as it's not frayed or really dried out. There's not much of a problem there. That's some of the advantages with braid too. So I hope you guys enjoyed our show today, and make sure to remember to subscribe and stay tuned. Hope you guys enjoyed. Remember, tight lines, keep fishing.